With my action this afternoon, we're putting every school receiving taxpayer dollars on notice that if you let men take over women's sports teams or invade your locker rooms, you will be investigated for violations of Title IX and risk your federal funding. There will be no federal funding.
Now, the order prevents people who are biologically assigned male at birth from participating in women's or girls' sporting events. More than half of voters support the measure. Now, according to a survey by AP VoteCast.
They say support for transgender rights in government and society has gone too far, and biological females are at a disadvantage. Advocates argue the ban is discriminatory. We spoke with the executive director of Equality Maine today. Here's what she had to say.
Important issues affecting Americans today, from the economy to housing, making sure there's enough food on people's plates, all sorts of issues. Picking on transgender people and spending so much time and energy in his first 2 weeks in office really isn't paying attention to what Americans want.
Maine's Attorney General and 14 others issued a joint statement today to reassure that access to gender-affirming care is available in their states, writing in part, quote, healthcare decisions should be made by patients, families, and doctors, not by a politician trying to use his power to restrict your freedoms.
I heard men are still playing in Maine. Is anybody here from Maine? Who is that? Is that the governor?
Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So I have a follow-up from yesterday's story about a transgender player winning a pole vault competition in the girls division. Maine have decided to ignore Trump's executive order and continue to allow male athletes to compete in women's categories. They have been defiant. It appears they have the same approach when it comes to this whole gender-affirming care, giving kids access to puberty blockers and all of that. And we know that the executive order stipulates that the federal government just won't fund them. Republican representatives in Maine, such as Laurel Libby, who's been very vocal about this injustice against girls. And she was called a bully for saying that it's wrong to allow this male athlete into a girls' competition.
A Maine lawmaker is facing some praise and criticism, too, for posting a photo that she says shows a transgender student on the podium for a girls' sport. The I-Team's Stephanie Grinley is following this developing story from the live desk, and Steph, that lawmaker just posted again about this today.
Yeah, Marissa, she did, and she's doubling down despite calls to take down the post in the first place. Republican Representative Laurel Libby of Auburn posted on Facebook this week a photo of a student, unblurred, who she named. She also called the student athlete, quote, unremarkable in boys sports. Now we have blurred the student's face to protect the student's identity. Libby says the student placed 5th in a boys pole vault 2 years ago, but placed 1st in a girls championship event this week. Libby's post has received thousands of shares and tens of thousands of comments. Some calling the situation unfair to girls. Others calling out Libby for naming the student and sharing the face. Libby appeared on Fox News this week to talk about the situation in her post. She pointed to a New York Times Ipsos poll that showed 79% of Americans don't think people born as male should play in female sports.
Mainers are independent-minded and they are commonsensical, and this defies common sense.
Now, House Speaker Ryan Fecteau gave a statement to the Press-Herald saying, quote, all kids, including transgender students, deserve better than to be used as political fodder for internet bullies. They shouldn't have to worry about a politician sharing images of them online without their consent, end quote. Now, we did reach out to Representative Libby for comment today and have not heard back. She posted about the situation again today and has not taken her previous post down.
Well, it appears Trump himself has weighed into this whole debate. He has responded, and he has said that they will not receive federal funding.
Trump weighing in on the controversy over transgender athletes in high school sports in Maine. It comes just days after that controversial post from a Republican Maine lawmaker.
We told you this week, Representative Laurel Libby posted saying a Greeley athlete placed 5th in boys pole vaulting last year and 1st in the girls division this year. Due to state law, the Maine Principals Association allows transgender athletes to compete in girls and women's sports. President Trump now threatening to withhold federal funding in comments made tonight at the Republican Governors Association.
Well, I hate to tell you this, but we're not going to give many federal money. They are still saying we want men to play in women's sports, and I cannot believe that they're doing that. They are closely to find out who that guy is that raised his hand. Maybe he's just kidding. But so we're not going to give him any federal funding, none whatsoever, until they clean that up.
Again, President Trump there threatening to withhold federal funding over that issue here in Maine. We'll continue to watch what happens after those comments tonight.
So I love the assertiveness. That's it. They're not going to get any federal funding, and that obviously is going to have serious repercussions. It's going to affect voters who voted for politicians who are all for males competing in women's sports. For some reason, there are people who are still defending the indefensible. I don't understand why this is a hill that Democrats want to die on, because they're clearly on the wrong side of history. They're going to be known as the party who endorsed and encouraged injustices against girls, injustices against women, despite claiming the opposite, claiming to be the party for women and all of that. So I don't understand why they are willing to continue ignoring this executive order. It's great to see a president that is standing up for girls, standing up for women, for female athletes. It's about time. I hope the governor, all of those who are actively encouraging the resisting of this executive order, I hope they come to their senses very soon, for the sake of their own constituents and for the sake of female athletes. These male athletes can compete in the boys' division. It's not that hard. This athlete was competing with boys not too long ago. What, last year? Or at the most 2 years ago, came 5th? How can anybody say that this is fair? And girls deserve safe and fair sports like anyone else, like any other group. So shortly after Trump signed his executive order, multiple states, including Maine, California, Minnesota, and others, ran primarily by Democrats, indicated that they would not comply with Trump. The executive director of the primary governing body for high school sports in the state of Maine said athletics teams will continue to determine eligibility based on a student's stated gender identity, despite the president's executive order seeking to keep men out of women's sports. Mike Burham, executive director of the Maine Principals Association, said the president's order conflicted with the state law aimed at protecting human rights, and, as a result, the MPA will defer to the latter when it comes to determining athletic eligibility. The executive order and our Maine State Human Rights Act are in conflict, and the Maine Principals Association will continue to follow state law as it pertains to gender identity, Vernon told local news outlet Maine Public following Trump's February 5th executive order. In a previous statement, Vernon reiterated that MPA would be instructing all schools in Maine to follow the Maine Human Rights Act, which he said was in accordance with the January 21 notice from the Department of Education. The staff at MPA will closely monitor any updates from federal and state authorities regarding the potential impact of the president's executive order on high school sports participation and adjust its policy accordingly. So these are the people you have to blame for losing federal funding when that does inevitably happen. When a state loses its federal funding, it faces significant financial difficulties, leading to potential cuts in vital services like healthcare, education, and social programs, impacting the lives of citizens as states struggle to cover the budget gap with their own funds, potentially resulting in reduced government services, staff layoffs, and increased costs for residents depending on the level of federal funding previously received. Allowing a male athlete to compete in a women's competition is not a human right. And if anything, it violates the human rights of the female athletes because it's taken away fair and safe sports for women, for girls. You can't say that you're going to trample upon the rights of female athletes to appease the desires of other groups. That is trying to justify discrimination and injustices against these girls and female athletes. And there's simply no justification for that. And if you ask me, it's outright abusive. I'm glad that action is being taken, that Trump has pledged to take action. And they need to take a good look at their policies and re-examine their stance on gender identity and get back to acknowledging that there are only two genders, male and female. And sports has categories for a reason, for very good reasons. And they know it, but they have bowed at the altar of gender ideology, clearly. And the people who are going to suffer include those who voted for them, their own constituents. Hi guys, so I'm about to wrap up editing this video and some breaking news came in. Trump confronted the governor of Maine and he told her to her face that they're about to lose their federal funding. Take a look.
NCAA has complied immediately, by the way, that's good. But I understand Maine, is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
Well, we are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
So yeah, there you have it. I thought I need to put that in this video because that wraps up everything nicely. I really hope the governor of Maine comes to her senses, thinks about her constituents who don't actually want boys competing against girls anyway. She's hiding behind the state law, claiming I'm just following state law when the reality is this is what you want for some reason. She's about to find out what happens when you ignore this executive order and continue to allow boys to take girls' championships. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. Take care of yourselves and God willing, I will see you in the next video.